You know, majorities of Americans, I think for the first time, a majority of more Americans feel favorably about socialism than capitalism.
Which is a total catastrophe.
And increasingly, there are these kind of systemic critiques of capitalism. Do you feel similarly that our system of government is irredeemable? I mean, you've said in the past, you know, you don't think it's ethical to have a country with billionaires where there were so many people who are, you know, struggling to get their basic healthcare needs met.
And for those who may have missed it, I'm only doing a small clip of this hour and 17-minute interview, but at one point, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that capitalism is unredeemable or irredeemable. And she said before that capitalism will not always exist in the world. And I mean, that just really tells you all you need to know about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the fact that she has ties with Democratic Socialists of America. She's a dues-paying member, or was a dues-paying member. And this is an organization, I did a whole video about it. They openly promote Karl Marx and sell Karl Marx merch on their website. They have members that say that communism is a good idea. DSA has openly said that they want to abolish profits. And meanwhile, you have all these democratic socialists who insist, we don't want to get rid of capitalism. We love capitalism. We just want some free health care. We just want everyone to have a living wage. And we just want to get money out of politics. And we just want to make sure everyone is taken care of. And then you have AOC saying capitalism is irredeemable and it will not always exist in the world.
You know, at what point does that translate into a broader systemic critique of the country and a critique of what kind of leaders we should be electing going forward?
I don't think that our government is irredeemable. If I did, I wouldn't have run for office.
But
what a politician. Look at that nice smile followed by the applause. Woo! You go, AOC.
But capitalism in particular, right? Because it could be different.
So I think the tough part about this, about like, is capitalism redeemable, et cetera, is that it's hard to have these conversations, I think, as a society, because we all have different ideas of what, just in the public imagination, there's a
public imagination. There's no such thing as public imagination. This is a term she used on Twitter last week. Public imagination. There's no public mind or public consciousness. Everyone has their own mind and their own imagination. There's no such thing. Even if she's speaking figuratively, it's a fucking stupid concept. Public imagination.
There are different ideas of what does capitalism mean, what does socialism mean, et cetera. But for me, when I think about what those definitions are, capitalism to me, it's an ideology of capital. It puts capital, the most important thing is the concentration of capital, and it means that we seek and prioritize profit and the accumulation of money above all else, and we seek it at any human and environmental cost.
This is a total straw man. All capitalism is a political system where government protects individual rights and property rights, where individuals are free to voluntarily exchange goods and services. It does not mean sacrificing other people or sacrificing other people's values to your own, because if you do that, you condone this dog-eat-dog world where my gain is your loss. No, capitalism and freedom is all about win-win transactions. And you don't want to sacrifice other people because they may be able, they're more likely to produce goods and services and products that will benefit your life. When people are free to pursue happiness and pursue values, they're probably going to invent new stuff, develop new technology, and create services that you will be happy to give your money over for. Furthermore, you can't live a good life unless you have the freedom to pursue profits. It's not, this is a false dichotomy, profits versus people. If you're pro-people, if you're pro-human rights, if you're pro-happiness here on earth, you should be pro-profits. People need to be free to pursue profits and make profits, and that's the only way things get better, is if people are free to pursue values and exchange goods and services. Furthermore, why would it make anyone happy to sacrifice others for their own happiness? Sacrifice is not noble. Sacrifice is not an ideal. Think about it. Why do people go to parties? Have you ever been to a party before? When you go to a party, what do? Do you just sit in a corner and dick around on your iPhone for 2 hours and not talk to anyone? No, you go to parties to socialize and to be and enjoy time and to share values and be with people that you enjoy being around. Part of living a good and happy life is sharing values and experiences with other people and having fun with other people and loving other people. Otherwise, life is not really worth living.
That is what that means. And to me, that ideology is not sustainable and cannot be redeemed. But when we...
And the irony here is if any political system is demanding sacrifice of others, it's socialism. It's socialism. Hey, everyone has to sacrifice for the greater good.
When we talk about ideas, for example, like democratic socialism, it means putting democracy and society first instead of capital first. It doesn't...
Again, putting society first. That's what democratic socialism is all about. So if you're being selfish in your life, if you're working hard and you're, saving money because you eventually want to start a business or you eventually want to go on the getaway vacation of your dreams, travel Europe, go to the Caribbean, if you're saving up money for your dream car that you've always wanted, if you're saving up money for a brand new PlayStation 4 or Nintendo Switch because you want to play video games, you want to play Fortnite with all your friends and goof around, well, you need to stop being selfish. How dare you? It's all about society. You should sacrifice your happiness and your values for the sake of society. No one's allowed to be happy. No one's allowed to pursue values or live their life until everyone is taken care of.
It doesn't mean that you put other things last. It doesn't mean that the actual concept of capital as a society should be abolished or anything like that.
Except DSA, the organization you have given money to and supports you, has openly said that they want to abolish profits.
But it's a question of our priorities. And right now, I think what we are reckoning with are the consequences of putting profit above everything else in society. Because what it means is people getting paid less than what it takes to live. What it means is people that need insulin die because they can't afford it, even though us as a society can afford it, and also because insulin was originally made free, because the idea of having to pay to live seemed crazy, even to the people.
The idea of paying to live is reality. It's a fact. When has there ever been a point in human history where people don't have to pay to live? To eat food, to clean water, to build shelter, to have energy to warm your house and power your house, someone needs to pay with labor and ideas and invention and innovation in order to produce all those goods that are required to live. Food doesn't just magically come out of nowhere. Someone has to figure out how to grow it. Someone has to figure out how the seasons work and whatnot, so that they can They can develop agriculture. To build houses, someone has to find resources and extract resources, whether it's wood from trees or steel so that you can have reinforced steel, whether it's concrete to build the buildings and the houses needed for shelter, whether it's digging oil out of the ground or finding ways to get energy from the sun or turn nuclear energy into electricity. Someone has to figure that out. Someone has to produce the goods. Cleaning water, you have to collect water, you have to clean it, you have to boil it. Someone has to pay for that somehow. Again, her whole ideology is based on fantasy.
Even to the people who discovered it. And so for me, it's a question of priorities. And right now, I don't think our priorities are sustainable. But there's also, again, in the public imagination, a lot of fear-mongering about what democratic socialism means, that it's like...
Yeah, there's a lot of fear-mongering because organizations you support, again, Democratic Socialists of America, openly say that they want to abolish profits. The members of Democratic Socialists of America, they have hammer and sickle symbols and their dumb avatars, and they say communism is a good idea, and they openly promote Karl Marx and sell merch. I mean, I know I already said this. Where do you think all this fear is coming from? And then you propose the Green Leap Forward, making all of these ridiculous promises that cost hundreds of trillions of dollars. Fear-mongering. Sorry, I'm not the one that gave money to a communist organization. It's not fear-mongering if I'm just explaining what's out there in the world, what ideas are what ideas people are pushing.
It's like that government's going to take over.
I mean, heck, I just did that whole video. The Young Turks are useful idiots for communism, and how some of their paid talent promote communism. How they often have Marxist intellectuals on their show, and people saying property is theft. And they're economists, they're Marxists, and they're stupid economists like Richard Wolff and Stephanie Kelton. Oh, it's just fear-mongering, no big deal.
That government's going to take over the private sector, and in fact, in my opinion, those two things need to be separate. And what we're actually experiencing right now is the opposite. What we are experiencing is, just as there's all of this fear-mongering that government is going to take over every corporation and government is going to take over every business or every form of production, we should be scared right now because corporations have taken over our government.
So notice that she's not arguing against what she just said. She's not dispelling any myth. She's not saying, well, I'm not against that. She's just saying, oh, well, what we should really be worried about is corporations taking over our government, which to a certain extent that there might be truth to that. That's what happens when you have a mixed economy. You have a state of pressure group warfare. If the government's just going to say, "Hey, we're gonna siphon $3-4 trillion out of the economy, and we're open for business. We're just gonna give this money out to whoever has the loudest megaphone, whichever lobbyist group, whichever PAC, whichever corporation has the most convincing arguments that this would promote the general welfare," then everyone and anyone's going to come with their hand out looking for an advantage, looking for a subsidy, looking for money, if the government's just going to be handing out money left and right. So if you want to end this pressure group warfare, you can do so by getting government out of the economy altogether.
And in my opinion, we should be wary of any entity in which both of those things are combined, whether it's through one way or the other. And that's...
Yeah, so separate them. Let's have full laissez-faire capitalism. Separate the government from the economy. No problem.
That's why the emphasis in democratic socialism is on democracy. And it's not about,
Well, democracy still is not an ideal. It's mob rule. Tyranny of the majority, as James Madison said in the Federalist Papers.
It's just as much a transformation about bringing democracy to the workplace so that we have a say and that we don't check all of our rights at the door every...
Except you're demanding that the property owners, the owners of private property and private businesses, check their property rights at the door for the sake of workplace democracy. By the way, these workers have the right. They don't have the risk. They don't have. They're not beholden to investors or shareholders or whatnot. They don't have to worry about competing with other businesses. If they don't like their job, they're free to go to another job, another place of employment. Yet you think they should have a say in how the company runs? It's insane. Absolutely insane. So a worker can go to a business, say a pizza parlor, and they get to decide what's on the menu, how much a pizza costs, how much the workers are paid, and all that jazz. And then they can just quit on a moment's notice and go work for a burger restaurant or just enter a completely different industry entirely. Go enter the computer industry or the car industry. Meanwhile, if they made a bad decision at the pizza place, I guess the owner's just stuck with it. I guess he's not an owner anymore because the workplace has been democratized. You can either have democracy or property rights, and the right answer is property rights. You can't have freedom without private property.
Every time we cross the threshold into our workplace, because at the end of the day, as workers and as people of society, we're the ones creating wealth, not a corporate CEO. It's not a CEO that's actually creating $4 billion a year. It is the millions of workers in this country that's creating billions of dollars of economic productivity a year. And our system should reflect that.
I mean, technically, yeah, the workers help create the wealth, but they are compensated with it through their wages, through their salaries and incomes. But no, it's ultimately the CEOs and the entrepreneurs and the business owners that are creating the wealth. Look at Steve Jobs. Started Apple, got fired from Apple. Apple fell off a friggin' cliff. And then Steve Jobs came back a decade and a half later. And then Apple went right through the stratosphere again with wealth creation and growth and profits. Gee, I wonder if there was some correlation there. Yeah, it was Steve Jobs who started Apple. Steve Jobs who brought Apple back from the dead with iPods and iPhones and iPads and a new generation of Macintosh computers. So tell me, who's more important to Apple in this equation? Is it Steve Jobs or is it the people that sell iPhones at the Apple store in the mall?
That's a mystery.